Dames en here, die akademiese prosesie sal binnekort inbeweeg. U word versoek om asseblief op te staan.
Bomma le bontate, molokoloko wa dirutegi o tla tsena mo nakong e kopana. Le kgopelwa go ema. Ladies and gentlemen, the academic procession will enter shortly. You're kindly requested to stand.
By the power vested in me, I hereby constitute this assembly as a legal congregation of the University of Pretoria. During this assembly, degrees with all the associated rights and privileges will be conferred on the candidates whose names appear in the program. You may be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, we request you to join us in silent prayer or meditation to give thanks for the achievements of our students. Thank you, and good morning to all of you here, and on behalf of the university, I would like to extend a hearty word of welcome to each and every one of you at this graduation ceremony. My name is Loretta Ferris, and I'm the Vice Principal Academic at the university. I would like to acknowledge in particular the Acting Dean, Professor Maharaj, the Deputy Dean Teaching and Learning, Professor Bloomer, our Director Enrollment and Student Administration, Dr. Mateka, as well as all chairpersons of schools, heads of departments, directors, the emeriti and honorary professors and other lecturers and their spouses. Also the representative of the Student Representative Council, Zekayam Njana, who will present the SRC academic honorary colors. And then, of course, the reason why we're all here, all persons on whom degrees will be conferred this morning, as well as all spouses, all parents, all partners, other parties, as well as dignitaries of whom we may not be aware of. Few disciplines shape the everyday life as directly and sometimes as quietly as the natural and agricultural sciences. Long before most of us begin our workday, the work of scientists, of researchers, of agricultural specialists, of innovators is already influencing the world around us. It influences the food we eat, the water we drink, the health of our environment, the sustainability of our resources, and the technologies that increasingly shape modern life. And that is why today's ceremony matters. This morning, we celebrate the achievement of 276 graduates, and this includes 19 doctoral degrees, 54 master's degrees, 67 honors degrees, and 136 bachelor degrees. These qualifications represent years of hard work, curiosity, persistence, and discovery. Behind every degree is a journey marked by long hours, by experimentation, by problem solving, and moments where results did not cooperate in the way that you may have hoped. I'm sure many of you has been there. But you continued, and that resilience is part of scientific endeavor. So let me congratulate each and every one of you this morning on this significant achievement. The University of Pretoria has long recognized the critical role that science and agriculture play in addressing both local and global challenges. Through our Thrive UP 2038 strategy, we as a university has committed ourselves to advancing knowledge that is not only academically rigorous, but that is also relevant, that is collaborative, and that is impactful. And at the heart of our new strategy is the belief that universities should contribute meaningfully to society, not only through our teaching and our research, but also through innovation that responds to the realities of our time. The Faculty of Natural and Agricultural Sciences embodies this in important ways. As the largest faculty of its kind in Africa, NAS, as we call it, continues to make significant contributions across food security, biodiversity conservation, biotechnology, environmental sustainability, data science, and renewable energy research, to name a few. Its work speaks directly to many of the challenges that are shaping our existence at the moment, but also our future. The faculty's research excellence is also recognized both nationally and internationally. But perhaps more importantly, the faculty's work has practical impact, whether it's improving agricultural systems or advancing scientific discovery, responding to environmental pressures, or strengthening our understanding of disease and sustainability. NAS contributes knowledge with impact that matters. And today, as the graduates here, you become part of that contribution. And addressing these challenges requires individuals who can think critically, work collaboratively, and apply knowledge responsibly. And that is what we have tried to instill in you, whilst we are also trying to teach you your discipline. And the responsibility to address all of these challenges now not only resides with us and the people behind me, but also now with you, because we have taught you to do exactly that, to be part of a community of scientists who address these challenges. And so whether your work takes you in laboratories, into farms, into classrooms, into research institutions, into industry, into conservation, into technology or entrepreneurship, your contribution will matter. Because as you know, science is not only about discovery, it is about that responsibility and the impact that it drives. So we will rely on you now to assist us in protecting natural resources, in strengthening food systems, and advancing innovations. And so one of the remarkable things about natural and agricultural sciences is that progress is often built slowly and carefully. But small breakthroughs can lead to significant change over time. We know that a single research finding can improve agricultural practices, or scientific insights can influence public policy. And innovation ultimately transforms the way in which communities live and work. So progress is often cumulative. It is built through patience and through a continued commitment to asking important questions. I'm also mindful that your studies have taken place during a period of considerable global change and uncertainty. But we believe that the graduate attributes that we instilled in you will speak to your adaptability and your own determination as you face these global pressures and the moment of uncertainty. But as you move forward, please remain curious, remain open to learning, remain committed to ethical practice, and remain conscious of the broader impact that your work can have. Finally, dear graduates, today also marks the beginning of your journey as alumni of the University of Pretoria. You remain part of this university as an alumnus. And we want to remind you that, and to encourage you to remain connected to the university and to your faculty, but also to one another as you continue your professional journey or your academic journey, whichever may lie ahead. The relationship that you have built with your peers, with your lecturers, through shared challenges and collaboration and discovery should continue long after today. May you continue to question boldly, to think critically, and use your knowledge to benefit both society and the world around you. Thank you. I now request the Dean to introduce to me the candidates present whose names appear in the program.
Madam Vice Principal, the supervisors will now introduce the doctoral candidates.
Madam Vice Principal, I introduce to you Miretu Muluketa Mugoro, who has complied with the requirement for the degree Philosophiae Doctor with a thesis titled The Impact of Digital Finance on Financial Inclusion and Income in Kembata Tambaro Zone, Ethiopia, prepared under my supervision. In this thesis, the candidate examined the impact of digital finance on financial inclusion and income in rural Ethiopia, with a focus on the Kembata Tambaro zone. That was done within the context of Digital Ethiopia Strategy 2025. Using a mixed method approach and contemporary econometric analysis, the study examined key factors influencing the adoption of and usage intensity of mobile money platforms such as Telebir and CBE Bir. The findings show that digital finance significantly enhances account ownership, savings, borrowing, and income. On the other hand, adoption and usage of digital finance are driven by education, mobile phone ownership, internet access, trust, and perceived usefulness. The study demonstrates that digital finance can address structural barriers to financial inclusion and contribute to inclusive economic development in underserved rural areas. This research offers valuable insights for developing effective digital financial ecosystems and strategies in low-income settings. Madam Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate. Congratulations.
Madam Vice Principal, I introduce to you Uta Rain Leka Atebe, who has complied with the requirements for the degree of Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis entitled Assessment of Urban Forest Ecosystems and Local Policy Options to Restoration, a case study of coastal city of Limbe in Cameroon, prepared under my supervision with Professor William Mala as co-supervisor. In her thesis, the candidate assessed urban forest ecosystems and management for the understanding of how principal authorities have incorporated urban forest in enhancing city resilience against environmental hazards like floods and landslides. By integrating social and ecological data generated from the ethnographic and ecosystem services evaluation approaches, the thesis conveys that the lack of investment in strategic urban forest management and the absence of urban forest provision in planning documents have resulted in an urban forest structure dominated by colonial urban forest elements, typified by aging and exotic roadside tree species. The study also demonstrates, in terms of ecological and monetary values, the contribution of urban forests to carbon storage and sequestration and surface runoff, and how current urban forest management approaches negatively impact these ecosystem services. The study provides vital information for sustainable urban forest management in coastal cities and local policy options to guide their integration into building sustainable, resilient cities. Madam Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate. Congratulations.
Madam Vice Principal, I introduce to you Vessel Johannes Bonnet, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Philosophia Doctor with a thesis titled Localizing Brightness, Shape, Moisture, Soil, Radiative Transfer, Modeling, Parameterization for Improved Canopy Reflectance Simulation, prepared under my supervision and with Professor Paxi Shewa as co-supervisor. In this thesis, the candidate explored improvements in canopy spectral reflectance simulation and biophysical parameter retrieval achieved by using brightness, soil, moisture, BSM radiative transfer model to simulate local soil spectra. Localized BSM parameter distribution representing local soil spectra were developed, serving as the basis for the thesis. The use of these background spectra is demonstrated to improve overall canopy spectral simulation accuracy and plant aerial index retrieval accuracy when coupled with a pro-cell radiative transfer model. The parameterizations were also used in combination with machine learning algorithms to estimate soil moisture content from multispectral imagery. The work provides a robust foundation for scalable, accurate simulation and monitoring of soil and vegetation dynamics, which are essential for ecological processes and climate resilience, demonstrating its importance in environmental management. Madam Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate. Congratulations.
Madam Vice Principal, I introduce to you Gerhard Kurtze, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Philosophy Doctor with a thesis titled nutrient response of high-line silver-brown laying hens during peak egg production, prepared under the supervision of Professor Janssen van Rensburg and with Professor Kwakkel and Dr. Starr as co-supervisors. In this thesis, the candidate investigated the nutrient response of laying hens to key essential nutrients influencing performance, egg quality, feed efficiency, nutrient digestibility, and body composition. Through a series of integrated experiments, the research demonstrates that strategic modification of essential nutrient levels in layer diets can optimize productivity, reduce nutrient wastage, and support prolonged laying cycles. The work provides novel insight into the interaction between dietary fat and digestible lysine with apparent metabolizable energy, as well as the effects of digestible non-essential amino acid content on nutrient digestibility, body composition, and overall bird health. The candidate's findings present practical, economically relevant recommendations for refining nutrient formulation strategies within modern laying hen production systems. Madam Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate. Congratulations.
Madam Vice Principal, I introduce to you Edwin Moya Coroni, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Philosophy Doctor with a thesis titled Bell Pepper, Fruit Losses and Microbiome Dynamics in Small-Scale Farming Systems, prepared under my supervision and with Dr. Jareshma Gogol and Dr. Nasrif Siam as co-supervisors. In this thesis, bell pepper fruit losses and microbiome dynamics in small-scale farming systems were investigated. The candidates systematically studied post-harvest losses and the causal agents of pepper losses and microbiome shifts. And this happened during bell pepper development under different small-scale farming systems. Through interview-guided surveys, field observations, pathogen isolations, molecular and microbiome analysis, the study quantified losses exceeding 20%, primarily caused by Fusarium alternaria and Colitotrichum species. A key contribution of this work was demonstrating that post-harvest decay originates from infection during flowering. The importance of pre-harvest disease control was highlighted and variability in fungicide efficacy shown. The potential of utilizing combinations of positively interacting beneficial microbiome populations as new future disease strategies was highlighted. Madam Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate. Congratulations.
Madam Vice Principal, I introduce to you Juliet Hilda Sajoki-Gonde, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Philosophy Doctor with a thesis titled Evaluating Agroforestry Practices in Rwanda, Exposure, Adoption and Impact Among Smallholder Farmers, prepared under my supervision and with Professor Jordan as co-supervisor. In this thesis, Evaluating Agroforestry Practices in Rwanda, Exposure, Adoption and Impact Among Smallholder Farmers, the candidate demonstrates the causal impact of exposure to agroforestry practices on tree planting adoption and the impact of practicing agroforestry on socio-economic outcome among smallholder farmers. This work enriches theory by clarifying the pathways through which program interventions affect agroforestry practice and by suggesting empirical methods for future evaluations. The research offers practical policy, emphasizing that ongoing support and adaptive program design are crucial for greater and more intensive adoption of tree planting. Moreover, the candidate highlights the benefits of on-farm fuel wood production, demonstrating that through agroforestry, households have alternative sources of fuel wood and spend less time collecting it. The findings provide valuable information and recommendations to better design agroforestry program interventions in sub-Saharan Africa. Madam Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate. Congratulations.
Madam Vice Principal, I introduce to you Gawisi Junior Mabuza, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Philosophy Doctor with a thesis titled Anti-Plasmodial and Anti-Gonococcal Activity of Ziziphus plant species, which are indigenous to South Africa, prepared under my supervision and with Prof. Chigalanke as co-supervisor. In this thesis, the candidate provides the first comprehensive scientific validation of the ethnomedicinal use of Ziziphus rivularis and Ziziphus zeiheriana for treating malaria and gonorrhea. By integrating biological assays with advanced metabolomics, chemometric modeling, and molecular docking, the study tentatively identified constituents that can be further explored as potential drug leads. The study linked observed activities to specific chemical classes, including aliphatic compounds, fatty acids, and terpenoid-based compounds. The candidate demonstrated that supervised OPLSDA models can reliably discriminate between active and non-active extracts and highlighted key antigonococcal metabolites with strong binding affinities to DNA gyrase A. This work advances ethnobotanical bioprospecting, offers drug lead candidates for malaria and gonorrhea, and provides approaches essential for sustainable resources use and future phytochemical drug discovery. Madam Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate. Congratulations.
Madam Vice Principal, I introduce to you Mzwandile Petros Mabuza, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Philosophiae Doctor with a thesis titled Crop and Soil Response to Irrigation with Acidic Saline Mine Waters, prepared under my supervision and with Dr. Phil Tanner and Professor Martin Steyn as co-supervisors. In the thesis, the candidate explored the potential of irrigating crops with untreated acidic and saline mine waters. This study is the first in South Africa to irrigate crops with such waters using strategic soil liming to mimic a typical high-density sludge acid mine water treatment plant. The body of work presented in this thesis contributes meaningfully to academic knowledge and has important practical implications for mine water irrigated cropping systems. This study is expected to have a lasting impact on the development of mine water irrigation decision support platforms and on the use of untreated mine waters in irrigated agriculture. Madam Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate. Congratulations.
Madam Vice Principal, I introduce to you Christopher Magona, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Philosophy Doctor with a thesis titled Predicting Future Beef Production from Different Breed Types in Pasture-Based Systems Under Climate Change in South Africa, a Modeling Approach, prepared under my supervision and with Professors Hassan, Tesfamariam, and van der Linde as co-supervisors. In this thesis, the candidate quantified the impact of future climate change on beef cattle breed types across South African agroecological regions. The candidate calibrated and validated the LIGAPS beef model as a tool for assessing extensive pasture-based beef production in South Africa across 4 beef breed types. Subsequently, the model was applied to assess future beef production under different climate scenarios across agroecological regions. Results showed significant declines in average daily gains across all breeds, with the Bos Taurus breed type being the most vulnerable to heat stress. Furthermore, the study investigated the potential of selection for adaptation traits to buffer climate change impacts. The candidate demonstrates the need for agroecological, region and breed-specific interventions to mitigate the effects of climate change on South African beef production systems. Madam Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate. Congratulations.
Madam Vice Principal, I introduce to you Jacqueline Maputa, who has compiled with the requirements for the degree Philosophy, a doctor with a thesis titled Targeting the P10 Axis in Metastatic Melanoma Cancer for the Reversal of Multi-Drug Resistance, prepared under my supervision and Dr. Danielle Twilly as co-supervisor. In this thesis, the candidate investigated various hallmarks of multi-drug resistance in metastatic melanoma cancer. The candidate demonstrated the efficacy of medicinal plant and a chemical compound for the first time against drug resistance hallmarks in the metastatic melanoma through the in silico and in vitro studies. The samples significantly chemosensitized malignant melanoma cells, which has been a novel finding. The study addresses drug resistance, a significant hurdle in metastatic melanoma therapeutics, by reversing drug resistance and enhancing treatment efficacy. Madam Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate. Congratulations.
Madam Vice Principal, I introduce to you Mwale Shishale Mumba, who has complied with the requirements for the degree of Doctor of Philosophy with his thesis entitled an integrated assessment of endemic cryptococcus forest of northwest Zambia, implications for carbon storage. In her thesis, the candidate studied the understudied dense and endemic forest ecosystem of northwestern Zambia to generate baseline information to its sustainable management, conservation, and carbon storage potential. The study presents the body of knowledge that advances the understanding of how ecological and human dimensions shape this unique forest system. The candidate has demonstrated how socioeconomic factors influence local communities' use of forest resources and eventually drive forest cover loss of this ecosystem. Remote sensing analysis revealed a decline in forest cover over a 25-year period, with transition from closed to open forest indicating degradation. The habitat-specific allometric models developed provide improved estimates of biomass and carbon stocks, offering information vital for conservation, planning, and carbon management, initiatives such as RED Plus for the unique forest ecosystem. Madam Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate. Congratulations.
Madam Vice Principal, I introduce to you Basirat Arinola Olanipekun, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Philosopher Doctor with a thesis titled Effect of High Pressure Processing with a certification on bacillus spores in infant complementary foods, prepared under my supervision. In her thesis, the candidate established a comprehensive scientific basis for using high-pressure processing in combination with mild heat and acidification to control bacillus species spores in infant complementary foods. By integrating pilot-scale industrial processing trials, detailed mechanistic studies of spore physiology, morphology, and ultrastructure, and a meta-analysis of bacillus species spores inactivation under HPP conditions, the work demonstrates that optimized pH temperature-pressure combinations can achieve the required bacillus species spore reductions in low-acid infant food matrices while maintaining nutritional and sensory quality. This thesis provides a framework to guide infant food producers and regulatory agencies in designing minimally processed, commercially sterile, high-pressure processed infant foods, enhancing the food safety of one of the most vulnerable consumer groups, and positioning HPP-based multi-hurdle preservation as a key technology for future infant food safety and nutrition. Madam Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate. Congratulations.
Madam Vice Principal, I introduce to you Waliyat Olayede Oloyede, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Philosopher Doctor with a thesis titled The Commercial Potential of Bambara Groundnut, Orange-Fleshed Sweet Potato, and Cowpea along their value chains in South Africa for food and nutrition security, prepared under my supervision. Underutilized crops have a potential to contribute to food and nutrition security. However, underutilized crop value chains are weak and fragmented, characterized by multidimensional challenges that limit their commercialization. The candidate investigated the commercialization potential of these crops along their value chains for food and nutrition security. The candidate found that the socioeconomic and demographic factors of rural farmers influence the commercialization potential of these crops. The candidate also showed the challenges that limit production and commercialization in the value chains of these crops. The structure, conduct, performance analysis showed that the underutilized crop markets were perfectly competitive and profitable. The thesis concludes that the value chain development and the consolidation of actors are crucial to realize the commercialization potential of these crops. Madam Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate. Congratulations.
Madam Vice Principal, I introduce to you Brenda Suntwe Shisanga Salasini, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Philosopher Doctor with a thesis titled Functional and Structural Insights into WY Domain Containing Core RXLR Phytophthora Effectors, prepared under my supervision. This thesis advances our understanding of Phytophthora pathogenicity by elucidating how conserved RXLR effectors employ stable structural frameworks to modulate early host immunity. Through an integrated cross-species computational survey and residue-level experimental analysis, the candidate demonstrated that conserved effectors uniquely embed short linear motifs within ordered WY domain scaffolds, enabling functional diversification without compromising structural integrity. By focusing on PPRXLR6, a conserved WY domain effector, the thesis shows that a leucine-rich WY domain interface collectively contributes to immune activation and early pathogen establishment. Targeted mutagenesis and quantitative phenotyping further revealed the functional consequences of disrupting this interface. Taken together, the thesis demonstrates that structural conservation underpins functional resilience in conserved RXLR effectors, offering an integrated mechanistic perspective that advances the molecular understanding of Phytophthora plant interactions. Madam Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate. Congratulations.
Madam Vice Principal, I introduce to you Nhlanhla Shabangu, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Philosopher Doctor with a thesis entitled Evaluating Herbicide Resistance and the Underlying Resistance Mechanisms in South African Populations of Amaranthus hybridus, prepared under my supervision and with Dr. Diana Maree and Dr. Charlie Reinhardt as co-supervisors. In his thesis, the candidate investigated the evolution of herbicide resistance in Amaranthus hybridus populations from the Bergville and Winterton districts in KwaZulu-Natal province. Glasshouse experiments confirmed that these populations were highly resistant compared to susceptible populations. Molecular analysis revealed that the resistance mechanism was conferred by a triple mutation in the EPSPS gene. The first report of this mechanism in South African Amaranthus hybridus populations. The research further evaluated the efficacy of pre- and post-emergence herbicides with alternative modes of action and identified resistance to ALS-inhibiting herbicides mediated by target site mutations in the ALS gene. These findings demonstrate that the KwaZulu-Natal population have evolved resistance to multiple modes of actions, underscoring the need for integrated weed management strategies to mitigate further resistance development in South African cropping systems. Madam Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate. Congratulations.
Madam Vice Principal, I introduce you Sida Ahmed Sami Ali, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Philosophia Doctor with a thesis title, Physicochemical and Rheological Changes in Sorghum During Fermentation for Production of Kisra, a gluten-free flatbread from Sudan, prepared under my supervision. In his thesis, the candidate found that fermentation can reduce sorghum batter viscosity but increase baking viscosity for Kisra production. This is due to microscopic and molecular changes in the batter as demonstrated by the enzymatic hydrolysis of protein and dietary fiber to liberate starch for pasting. The thin batter spread rapidly during baking, forming a continuous starch network that yielded a high-quality, gluten-free flatbread. Fermentation modifies the technofunctional qualities of sorghum, providing a scientific basis for standardizing and commercializing Kisra. This study contributes valuable insight into the development of gluten-free fermented foods with improved quality and nutritional benefits. Madam Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate. Congratulations.
Madam Vice Principal, I introduce to you Jonathan Tanganyika, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Philosophiae Doctor with a thesis titled The Effects of Production Systems and Sex on the Growth Performance, Carcass Characteristics and Meat Quality of Indigenous Muscovy Ducks in Malawi, prepared under the supervision of Professor Webb. The rising demand for ducks in Malawi prompted this study about the carcass and meat quality of this non-traditional livestock species. In the thesis, the candidate studied duck production and the effects of different feeding systems on the carcass and meat quality of Muscovy ducks. Both the production system and sex influenced the growth, carcass quality, and meat quality of ducks. Integrated duck rice systems produced higher, more desirable yields than other systems. The production system did not affect the proximate composition of Muscovy duck meat. However, free-range systems had higher mineral content than intensive systems. Sexual dimorphism influenced the growth and carcass yield between males and females. Different rearing systems affected the skin and meat color of ducks. A comparative analysis of chicken and duck meat showed that ducks contain higher levels of myoglobin, resulting in redder meat, making them more suitable for processing. Grilling or roasting yielded the most acceptable sensory attributes of duck meat. Madam Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate. Congratulations.
Madam Vice Principal, I introduce to you Damien Vasta Souza, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Philosophiae Doctor with a thesis titled Polyploidy in an African Geophyte, Endopolyploidy, Ecology and Response to Climate Change, prepared under my supervision and with Professor Michelle Graver as co-supervisor. In this thesis, the candidate assessed the impact of polyploidy on the indigenous grassland bulb Oxalis obliquifolia. Polyploidy is ubiquitous, has substantial effects on the ecology and evolution of organisms, and is argued to increase an organism's ability to survive environmental stress. The candidate characterized endopolyploidy expression, assessed pollinator guilds visiting diploids and polyploids, and tested the impact of plant competition on cytotypes under current and predicted climate scenarios. This research showed that pollinators do not distinguish between cytotypes and that the impact of competition between them is negligible, deepening the mystery of their frequent coexistence. Critically, diploids and polyploids showed similar responses to predicted climate change, refuting arguments for future polyploid advantage. This work significantly advances scientific understanding of the impacts of polyploidy and has profound implications for the management and conservation of our African grasslands under future climate change. Madam Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate. Congratulations.
Madam Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Master of Agriculture in Extension. Ntombi Zalapa Hombani. Madam Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Master of Agriculture in Rural Development. Lehlo Khnolo Masha. Madam Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Master of Consumer Science, Alinafe Medeche. Lericha Parchita. Specializing in clothing management, Melissa Foree. Emmy Lombard with distinction. Waitumelo Montoshi. Miri Sutherland. Madam Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Master of Science, specializing in biotechnology. Gabriela Clara. Vera Roeder with distinction. Mame van Boedselaar. Bernice van Pletsen. Rhoda Visser. Specializing in food science, Jessica Dach, with distinction. Lindelwe Ndlovo. Clarissa van Heerden. Griselda Visser. Specializing in forest science, Talent Buthelezi. Audrey Dunbar. Zivuya Shifote. Specializing in medicinal plant science, Binang Morake. Precious Ramoncha. Rochelle van Staden. Specializing in plant pathology, Mokhadi Malopo with distinction. Tuelo Motlopa. Jessica Pracker. Specializing in plant science, Jabulile Mashlangu. Ramakone Motwa. Specializing in soil science, Prosper Sibanda. Madam Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Master of Science in Agriculture in Agricultural Economics. Kabelelo Mateka. Paula Ratete. Tobeka Sibisi. Madam Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Master of Science in Agriculture in Agronomy. Kwazi Nkrumalo. Madam Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Master of Science in Agriculture in Animal Science. In Animal Breeding and Genetics, Marika Hillocks. In Animal Nutrition, Tony Ferreira. Keen Jacobs. Mion Leroux with distinction. In Livestock Production, Tanya Bligno. Megan Hilton. Kiobetwe Monyoleche. In Production Physiology and Product Quality, Jody Young Grant. Madam Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Master of Science in Agriculture in Horticulture. Kieran Bremer. Shloshenifile Shongwe. Madam Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Master of Science in Agriculture in Pasture Science. Jamie Young. Madam Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Master of Science in Agriculture in Plant Pathology. Eneri Botha, with distinction. Nelesiwe Shlotswayo, with distinction. Karl Schellenberg. Lawrence van der Weyer with distinction. Madam Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Bachelor of Agriculture Honours. In Extension, Kotso Lekotla. Shetwa MacDonald. Takalani Malisha. Misho Mangani. Mamo Setsana Mangena. Pulelwa Mulanda. Elam Nkala. Tuli Sandane. Shilo Ngamu Lenche Ndovu. In rural development, Clive Lavita. Tepeslele Lukele, with distinction. Nomasanto Matiwane. Sesetu Matonsi. Ephraim Onyonke. Tesfamarayam Tesfariagi. Madam Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Bachelor of Agricultural Sciences Honours, specializing in crop science. Vera Immelman with distinction. Siyabonga Melwa. Pindulu Mboy. Amanda Ndlovu. Yanis Fister with distinction. Alicia Spanningberg. Madam Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Bachelor of Science Honours in Food Science. Anuska Priet. Mia Berger. Mia also receives the award for the SASDT, South African Society for Dairy Technology Meritus Award for a student in the Department of Food Science who achieved outstanding results and who displayed exceptional enthusiasm for the dairy component of the syllabus. Caesar Draza with distinction. Karabo Momone. Shante Maklabela. Lesejo Modibe. Tumo Motala. Lentatile Motlong. Fezile Ngubane. Larena Oosthuizen with distinction. Megan Roberts with distinction. Jaden Saunders. Famous Sosa with distinction. Margaret Wahamita. Taylor Wood. In medicinal plant science, Greta Hetcher with distinction. Greta also receives the award for Living Naturally TM Award for the best honors student in medicinal plant science. Trevor Shiba. Matteo Tatane with distinction. Shante van Dijk with distinction. Kaylee van Eerden with distinction. Courtney Wesley. In plant science, Leanne Broderick with distinction. Paul Els with distinction. Kiara Ephraim. Nandis Krobelar. Grace Owen. Marley Pretorius with distinction. Albert Retief. Talita Skierpers. Talita also receives the Schwick Schickwert Medal for Plant Science for the best BSc Honours student who obtained an average of at least 70% and whose essay is based on an aspect of plant science other than plant physiology. Ompile Sakabi. Jesse Sharifs, with distinction. Jesse also receives the award, the Mahrita Medal, Mess Medal, for the best BSc Honours student with an average of at least 70% and whose essay is based on an aspect of plant physiology. Samukelesiwe Twala. Michaela Tobias. Nicole Umnoti. David van der Merwe. In soil science, Jolene Zingararai. In the pillar, Meduka. Corleen van Aswegen. Madam Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Bachelor of Consumer Science in Food Retail Management, Mila Brooks. Zane Hollander. Claire McLover, with distinction. Claire also receives the South African Association of Family Ecology and Consumer Science Top Achiever Award to the best final year student in Consumer Science Food Retail Management. Zionelda Petersen. Angelique Wilken. In hospitality management, Joannika Cronier. Mia Hugo. Crizel Maney, with distinction. Crizel also receives the South African Association of Family Ecology and Consumer Science Top Achiever Award to the best final year student in Consumer Science Hospitality Management. Nzalama Mokalabele. Jenali Oosthuizen. Ingrid Pinar. Roon Wessels. Specializing in clothing retail management, Malia Abdullah. Almas Abubakar. Maria Brainard. Marinez Beitendach. Jean-Claude Downing. Chanel Dupria. Donatella Greater with distinction. Victoria Gray with distinction. Victoria also receives the South African Association of Family Ecology and Consumer Science Top Achiever Award to the best final year student in Consumer Science Clothing Retail Management. Clarissa Crisel. Lara Horn. Rachel Cushman. Margaret Kotzer. Marlette Luke. Megan Pike. Nika Pretorius. Michelle Steenekamp. Kara Talyard. Corley Terreblanche. Vinette van der Merwe. Keira van Hestien. Madam Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Bachelor of Science in Plant Science. Edith Boloy, Danielle Esterhazen, Jessica Garnett with distinction, Landiswa Shlangwa, Naledi Maleboho, Lana Marie Mering, Grace Ross with distinction, Angeline Singh, Werner from Brandes, Madam Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Bachelor of Science in Agriculture, in Agricultural Economics, in Agribusiness Management, Shietza Chaya, Duncan Curtin, Setimbunkosi Mzila, Njongo Nohoya, Johan Pretorius, Eleonore Prinsloo, Reso Khofotse Radazi, Salman Sidat, Jürgen Stein with distinction, Hendrik van Mest, Stephanus Viviers with distinction, Madam Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Bachelor of Science in Agriculture and Animal Science. Franco Badenhorst, Gillian Biokus, Sydney Davison, Ilani Deacon, Yamin Gulam, Johannes Janse van Rensburg, Elaine Kemp with distinction, Elizabeth Lange with distinction, Kara Liask, Letu Kutula Makubela, Matiba Marcela, Zenande Mbotsi, Muhammad Musa, Karabo Ntrube, Dolotando Nguenya, Vian Postumus, Keegan Pochita, Diane Roda, Sohail Sarang, Courtney Smith, Tamara van Vieren with distinction, Rowan Viransamy, Madam Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Bachelor of Science in Agriculture in Applied Plant and Soil Sciences. David Darocha with distinction. David also receives the Omnia Fertilizer Award for the best final year student in plant production and soil sciences, the South African Society for Crop Production Medal for the best final year student in crop production. The prize is shared. Arno Driffout with distinction. Arno also receives the South African Society for Crop Production Medal for the best final year student in crop production. The prize is shared. Samu Kelesiwe Kwala. Rorisang Masao. Rorisang receives the South African Society for Crop Production Medal. For the best final year student in crop production, the prize is shared. Muhammad Mata. Nicola McElligott. With distinction, Nicola receives the South African Society for Crop Production Medal. For the best final year student in crop production, the prize is shared. Shireen Mdadi. Cletus Malaudi. Karen Skuman with distinction. Karen receives the South African Society for Crop Production Medal. For the best final year student in crop production, the prize is shared. Solomon Steenkamp. Henry van den Bout. Nadia Volschenk. Madam Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Bachelor of Science in Agriculture in Plant Pathology. Martinez Erenich with distinction. Martinez also receives the Bayer Crop Science Prize for the best science student in plant pathology in the final year for the degree BSc or BSc Agric. Letabo Makaleng. Amore Matheson. Bachelor of Science in Food Management, specializing in culinary science. Shanae Labuskachne with distinction. Jenna Mayer. Masuda Balanzi. Ruti Mututu. Jolene Nair. Lesetsa Ramaroka. Specializing in nutrition, Jade Kutsia. Marit Fourie with distinction. Salea Gouden. Caleb Hariprasad. Neil Haywood. Kayla Maria. Mashadiso Mokai. Martello Christiana Shai. Bachelor of Science in Food Science, David Bevan. Joanna Fourie with distinction. Karunya Govender. Kristen Klein with distinction. Christel Koch. Tobile Mkunu. Rehabitswe Molaka. Itumaleng Mokwatedi. Janae Pretorius. Chairo Rapasha. Emma Roberts. Talia Schultz with distinction. Ryan Sahail. Dima Kakatso Tefo. Posoletso Chiane.
Can I ask all of our graduates, please stand? Let's give them a big hand for their hard work and their perseverance. Thank you. Thank you. Now, graduates, behind you and around you are all the people that supported you on this journey. Turn to them and say thank you. And then, last but not least, behind me on the podium are the lecturers who also supported you on this journey. Please give them a hand of thanks. We have now come to the end of the proceedings. Before we close, I wish to invite all of you for liquid refreshments afterwards in the marquee just outside of the Rembrandt Hall. You are requested to stand for the singing of the national anthem and to remain standing until the assembly has been dissolved and the academic procession has left the auditorium. The words of the national anthem will appear on the screens. Please rise. By the power invested in me, I hereby dissolve this assembly of the University of Pretoria.
Nos Sure! The graduates have spoken. Let's give them what they want. Graduates! I'll go on and more graduates. Sure! I'm daten tekele sanamare. Daten tekele sanamare. Daten tekele sanamare.